Welcome to worship from Nora Unitarian Universalist Church for Sunday, March 21st, 2021. We're glad you're here. Whoever you are and wherever you are, however you are joining us, we're glad you're here with us. Our first announcement, our all-important announcement, we're down to the finals of the quintessential favorite s'morg food. And the final two contestants are lefse and meatballs. It was hotly contested between meatballs and rice pudding, but meatballs pulled ahead by one vote. So if you feel strongly one way or another about lefse versus meatballs, be sure to vote on the church Facebook page or by emailing the church office by next Friday so we can crown a winner and also draw from the names of those who have voted throughout this bracket for a fabulous food-themed prize. Next Sunday, March 28th, our guest preacher will be the Reverend Jack Gady. In time of silver rain, the earth puts forth new life again. Green grasses grow and flowers lift their heads, and over all the plain the wonder spreads of life, of life, of life. In time of silver rain, when spring and life are new.
For the gift of this day and for our spiritual home, we give thanks as we light this symbol of our faith.
Our story this morning is called Kites, Magic Wishes That Fly Up to the Sky. It's written and illustrated by Demi. Once upon a time and long ago in China, there lived a painter of holy pictures. Many people would buy his pictures and offer them in the temple to their gods. They hoped and prayed that their wishes would come true. For example, if somebody wanted to be smart, he would offer a picture of Manjushri, the god of wisdom. If somebody wanted money, he would offer a picture of an abacus, which is used to count money. If somebody wanted peace, he would offer a picture of the peaceful Buddha. If somebody had bad eyesight and wanted good eyesight, she would offer a picture of herself without her glasses on. One day, a local woman came to the painter. She said, "I want a picture of a dragon, the symbol of wealth, wisdom, power, and nobility, so that my son will grow up to be big and strong. But I do not want an ordinary picture. I want you to paint it as a kite with strings. Then I can fly it right up to the sky, and the gods in heaven will see it immediately, instead of having to come down to the temple." The man painted a marvelous dragon kite for the woman, which she immediately flew to the heavens. Her son helped with the strings, and already he seemed bigger and stronger, richer and nobler to everyone who saw him. And so the other villagers went to the painter asking for their offerings to be painted on kites too. They asked for many wishes for their children, their parents, their husbands or wives, and for themselves. The holy painter was so busy painting kite after kite that he hardly had any time to paint holy pictures. They asked for birds, and they asked for insects. The people requested kites that looked like reptile, fish, and crustaceans. The villagers asked the holy painter to paint their kites with all types of animals. He painted gods and Buddhas for protections and blessings. And the painter made flower and symbol kites too. In addition to asking for wishes, many people used their kites to send away bad luck. They would let their kite strings out as far as they could go and then cut the strings, sending the bad luck away. As the kite drifted far away with the wind, all disease and calamities were carried away too. Later on in China, these magic kites took on an even deeper meaning and developed into a festival called the Double Ninth Festival, held on the 9th day of the 9th month, September 9th. When the chrysanthemum, or flower of autumn, blooms, families celebrate by climbing to the highest hills, having picnics and flying their kites. On this day, kite flying is taken as a symbol of rising higher and higher, being better and better, stronger, smarter, and finer in everything one does. All kinds of kites drift and dance in the clear, boundless space and compete with each other in contests of endurance, originality, and beauty. The contests begin with either solo flyers or kite flying teams taking part, and kites of every size and shape rise up in the sky. Huge kites and tiny kites, some only inches long. Some have sharp two-bladed knives attached to the string to cut the other kites down, and some have strings that have been treated with powdered glass. The treated strings can cut the strings of the other kites, calling them to somersault and fall. Some kites have whistles that sing in the sky. Some have a gong and drum attached. Others have blinking eyes. Decorations help bring luck and happiness, so many streamers and ribbons are added. Of the many kite flyers filling the hills, only 3 will be awarded prizes. The winner is given a cow and a ride in a sedan chair through the cheering crowd of contestants. Second prize is a pig, and third prize is a sheep. These prizes carry with them the invisible praise and magic of excellence in effort and execution, and the recognition of having the most magic kites in the contest. Joy and woe are woven fine, wrote William Blake, and when this we rightly know, safely through the world we go. Because we daily live the truth in the poet's words, we pause each time we gather to worship, to speak into the embrace of this beloved community our joys and our sorrows. You may type your joys and sorrows into the chat. You may speak them aloud where you are. You may hold them in the sanctuary of your heart and know that through the wonder and miracle of caring, we hold them with you. Today we think with sorrow of these 8 people whose lives were taken from them in Atlanta this week. Delana Ashley Yuan, Paul Andre Michaels, Zhaoji Tan, Diao Fang, Soon Park, Hyun Grant, Suncha Kim, Young Yu. And we remember also one injured and still surviving, Elcius Hernandez Ortez. May their families know comfort in this time of grief. And may we learn to stop hating. We celebrate with joy these birthdays. Jordan Liliaden, Mike Liliaden, Olga Bloomquist, and Tracy Schmeezing. And we recognize all those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken. Let us hold them in our hearts as we enter a period of meditation. Our words of meditation this morning are from Pablo Neruda with English translation by Stephen Mitchell. Now we will all count to 12, and we will all keep still. This one time upon the earth, let's not speak any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be a delicious moment, without hurry, without locomotives. All of us would be together in a sudden uneasiness. The fisherman in the cold sea would do no harm to the whales, and the peasant gathering salt would look at his torn hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars of gas, wars of fire, victories without survivors, would put on clean clothing and would walk alongside their siblings in the shade without doing a thing. What I want shouldn't be confused with final inactivity. Life alone is what matters. I want nothing to do with death. If we weren't unanimous about keeping our lives so much in motion, if we could perhaps do nothing for once, perhaps a great silence would interrupt this sadness, this never understanding ourselves and threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth is teaching us when everything seems to be dead and everything is alive. Now I will count to 12, and you keep quiet, and I'll go. Amen. We have 2 readings this morning for the first Sunday in spring. The first from Wilbur Willey. In the ancient world, March began the calendar year, and its ram is the first sign of the zodiac. There are those who might say this was to get the ugly month over as early in the year as possible. March rates pretty low on nearly everyone's list of favorite months, at least everyone in northern New England. It's right up there, or perhaps I should say right down there with February and November. I rate it a bit better than August myself, But here it's not my purpose to rate the months in order of my personal preferences and prejudice. Granted, there are a lot of things to be critical of in the third month of the year. It can be pleasant enough to go out in your shirt sleeves, but if you do and get more than 10 miles from home, sure as the sun sets in the west, the temperature will suddenly drop and you'll be left shivering. You back your pickup onto the lawn to unload a piano at the kitchen door, and what was so recently frozen gives way to sponge, and the wheel tracks will remain until July. You get used to 5 beautiful days in a row, and a cloud dumps a foot of snow in your driveway. It's a month between seasons, neither a winter wonderland nor a soft spring shower. It is muddy, it is bare, it is unpredictable. What snow remains is dusted with ashes, dirt, debris, and snow fleas. Go south or go back to bed for another month. But wait a minute. March does have some redeeming features, and I, for one, like the month. There is something in the air that suggests spring, even through the unexpected snow squalls and the cold. You know not only that something good is just around the corner, but that something good is already here. You wake early one day to find the front lawn covered with early robins. Although there may be patches of snow along the wall, those birds know a miracle is happening and they are part of it. Daffodils break through nearly frozen ground, and even when they have budded, they will not be deterred by a few frozen flakes. Neighbors are at their friendliest, as if astounded to have made it through another winter. March is a time for dreaming big dreams, not the ones that go poof in February, but the ones that build stone walls, that fix an outside door, that lead a horse to water and even make him drink. And if someone tells you to go fly a kite, you will know it's a kind remark. You can be a child again, running downhill, the paper dragon behind you, its tail fluttering in the breeze that yesterday tore through your leather jacket. No matter how raw the day, how sharp the wind, in March one is alive to the possibilities, and there is no place for pessimism. And from the poet Ruth Bryn, Ceremony of Spring. From the whispering past comes word of the ancient rites of spring, tales of the goddess who sought her beloved in the underworld, carnival held to gladden the hearts of the ancient deities of the earth, to beg from the mother goddess fruitfulness for field and flock and woman alike. It is written that the daughters of Jerusalem searched the dark city for the lover of the fairest woman, that the maidens of Israel wept on the mountains for the daughters of Jephthah. We know the earth needs neither ritual nor goddess to bring the seasons. In due course, the rotating globe will turn its cold face to the sun. Yet the past whispers to us, when bright new dress and spicy cakes gladden the children as once they were made to gladden the goddess. When we crouch in the black earth planting seeds, hoping for crops, we make the gestures of the most ancient ceremony of spring. Here end the readings.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
This morning's story is one I've returned to time and again when I'm invited to speak to people young or old about prayer or spiritual practice. I've used it in children's RE classes, in a family RE day here at Nora Church, in a workshop for adult survivors of child sexual abuse, and in the inpatient chemical dependency unit at New Ulm Medical Center. In those latter two settings annually for a few years running. On the surface, to ears steeped in what we call rational Western thought, it doesn't make much sense, does it? That I would get so much practical value from this story. Our Unitarian forebears, after all, rejected supernatural religion for a faith based in science. And the idea of kites carrying prayers and wishes to the gods isn't very rational. We know that brilliant scholarship comes from long hours of studying and the instruction of excellent teachers. Long life comes from good genes and healthy food, regular exercise, and access to high-quality, affordable health care. Picture prayers aren't part of the program. We know that respect is earned through the way we live our lives and conduct our business. Wisdom is to be gained through careful examination of and reflection on life's experiences, and by associating with wise folks. Bookstores, libraries, TED Talks, blogs, and podcasts offer the latest new ideas about how to obtain wealth, power, and happiness. And most of them focus on what we must do, not how we might pray, though that's changing a bit. And certainly most of them don't suggest flying kites. We mostly don't believe in bad omens, so we aren't too concerned with the proper kite for ridding ourselves of them. And our response to illness or calamity is more often medicine or insurance or fire detectors than letting a kite loose to float our troubles up to the sky. No, kites, in my experience, and I'll bet in most of your experiences too, are about fun, about color and movement, about beauty perhaps and skillful craftsmanship, about running into a brisk wind and feeling its power tugging at the string. Or at least that's what they were about for me before I discovered Demi's book, 20 or more years ago. For devotees of the newspaper comic strip, kites, or more accurately, a single kite tangled in a tree, might even be about hope and perseverance in the face of adversity. But kites as a means of prayer? Well, if you believe in a pantheon of gods who reside in the heavens, it does make some sense that the sky would be a better place to make offerings than in earthly temples. But if, as is the case with many of us, you don't believe in one God, let alone many gods, or if the one God or goddess or spirit of life you do believe in isn't an anthropomorphic being living in the heavens, then the practice just doesn't make much reasonable sense, despite the beauty and the artistry. On the other hand, I am totally enthralled by the idea of kites as prayers. I've done a tiny bit of surface research, and I've learned that long before they may have become vehicles for prayer, kites were used as tools of war, for communication, and for judging distances. That brought me down to earth with a bit of a bump after all these years of preaching about the possibility of kites as prayers, as I am about to do now. However, there also seems to be some truth to the story of prayers being painted onto kites and flown into the heavens. Now, it could be that the writers of all the articles I read had gotten their information from a single source of misinformation. We know how that goes these days. If that is the case, then all I'm about to offer here today is extrapolated from a story rather than from history. But there are worse sources of spiritual guidance than stories. Either way, fact or fiction or some blending of the two, I find it fascinating that people might know with such clarity their heart's desire, so as to be able to craft or commission the perfect symbolic kite. I wonder a bit what our 21st century American equivalent of the magic Chinese kite is, and I wonder quite a lot what kite each one of us would fly if we were to abandon all caution and raise them to the wind and give magic kite flying a try. I suppose the self-help books and Secret to Success articles and blogs and podcasts I mentioned earlier are one of our versions of a magic kite. We put a great deal of faith into the notion that if only we can find and read just the right theory and follow its advice very carefully, we will achieve our life's desire or solve our most persistent problems. And sometimes we're right, but not often for the long term. Medication and diet and workout regimens are versions of the kite as well. Offerings to the gods of science and fitness and quick fixes. And sometimes they too work to bring about our wishes or eliminate our problems. Tai Chi and yoga and myriad forms of meditation too are versions of kite flying that are often effective means of realizing our dreams, and perhaps means of a more profound and lasting fulfillment than that of the self-help programs. In China, as we heard, the flying of these magic or holy kites eventually developed into a kite flying festival, the Double Ninth Festival, held on the 9th day of the 9th month each autumn on September 9th. Around here, we tend to think of spring, not autumn, as kite flying season. Though it has been years since I've flown a kite, whenever March comes again, my thoughts drift toward kites. Toward the puffer kite my family had one year, surely not our first kite, but the one I remember most clearly, a bright yellow inflatable kite straight out of the 1970s. My thoughts drift toward the kites my church youth group built, decorated, and sold as a fundraiser when I was in high school, and the sample we took to a park across the street to try out. Toward a group of trick kite flyers I used to see once in a while on a not yet developed patch of land next to the freeway. Do you remember the kites of your childhood, your adulthood? The colors, the skeins of string on a stick or with a pencil stuck through the middle of a tube so it was easy to let out. The frustrating early attempts to get your kite airborne. Then at last, the sudden lift and tug of the wind. The feel of the wind in your hair and on your face, too. The kites that flew away, the ones that crashed to the ground, the ones you successfully landed and carried home and hung carefully until the next time. Spring is a time for kites. And in the Christian tradition, it's a time for self-reflection and self-examination of Lent, now more than half over. The way I see it, prayerful kite flying of the type described in our story must have been preceded by a similar period of personal reflection and examination. The people who asked the holy artist to paint kites for them must have been pretty well in tune with the state of their souls. Perhaps it doesn't take much introspection to request an eagle because you desire power and success or a tadpole for wealth. but to ask for the Buddha of light that you might overcome greed, or mandarin duck to bring faithfulness, or the praying mantis for patience and cleverness. These symbols seem to indicate some level of self-awareness. What would we discover, I wonder, if we spent the remaining weeks of Lent not repenting or preparing our souls to follow Christ, but rather reflecting deeply, honestly, fearlessly on our greatest desires and prayers, and which qualities and attributes we wish to incorporate into our beings, and which we wish to rid ourselves of? What kite would each of us commission from a holy kite painter and send aloft on these windy days of spring? Periodic examination of our deep desires is good for our souls, whether we do it at Lent or Yom Kippur or the turning of a new year or a time of personal crises, or as a pandemic is perhaps winding down. It gives us the opportunity to step momentarily out of the bustle of everyday life and family and work, and to remember who we truly are beneath and beyond our roles as parent, partner, professional, child, friend, or lover. It allows us to make course corrections if we find that the life we are living isn't likely to result in the fulfillment of our deepest wishes, or is not in alignment with our most sacred values. It's a time we may discover hopes and desires we never knew lay hidden within our hearts. Such remembering and discovery can be to our lives as a good and vigorous spring cleanup day is to our yards, clearing away accumulated debris, letting in warm sun and fresh breezes, and uncovering new and brilliant life. I'm struck by the fact that the people of the kite flying story not only knew their heart's desire, what they longed for and what they wanted to be rid of, they also flew symbolic kites up there in the open sky for all to see. It seems to me that leaving a picture prayer in a temple could be anonymous, but holding on to the string of a magic kite is a public declaration. This is who I am, praying for music and song with my cricket kite, for long life to enjoy it with my frog kite. This is me, asking for courage with my tiger kite, seeking to overcome anger with my Akshoya kite. There is something powerful and liberating in public declaration that one is not all one would be. Something at once humble and proud in acknowledging that I alone cannot make all of my wishes come true, so I am sending up this kite, this plea to the gods, to God, to my family and friends to help me obtain my desire. In years past, as I led others through the process of discernment and kite painting, I made my own kites. One with a tortoise for highest scholarship and a tiny mouse in the bottom point to balance intellectual pursuits with laughter and happiness. One, when my dad was dying, with a pine tree for longevity. That prayer was not answered with corporeal longevity for Dad, but his blessing on our family continues to be long-lived indeed. I even made a kite with a lotus, but that was more because I liked the design than out of any desire for purity. I'm going to give holy kite flying another try this spring. It's a natural sort of spiritual practice for me. I have great fondness, as you may have guessed, for kites, and the wind has long been my most useful metaphor for God. I'm going to spend these last days of Lent in discernment so that by Holy Week I can paint and on Easter fly a kite with a single representative image reflective of my most fervent desire. I invite you to join me. If you feel and believe differently than I about God and prayer, the endeavor for you may be one primarily of creativity and self-awareness, rather than prayer or meditation. Your image may be one of the ones I've mentioned this morning, or if you're in the neighborhood, I can loan you one of my 5 or 6 copies of the book, Kites, Magic Wishes That Fly Up to the Sky. Or you can choose and create your own representative symbol. Then make and paint or color in your kite, a full-sized functional one or a smaller symbolic one. Send in a picture of your kite before Easter and I'll include them in our service that morning as a celebration of our dreams or desires or wishes, and our willingness to go public with those dreams within the safety of this faith community. That's what church should be in every season, not just at Lent or kite flying season. It should be a great festival of children and adults, at times engaging in reflection and at times practicing the great paradox of spiritual kite flying, holding tight to the string of our desire, and at the same time letting go, letting the wind carry them where it will. Of course, kites and all kinds of prayers really aren't the only way of proclaiming our desires, not the only means of attempting to bring our wishes to fruition. Song and dance and study, child rearing and gardening, storytelling and social justice work, and candles of joy and sorrows. Done with deliberation and care, all of these are but a few ways of standing firmly on sacred ground, the sacred ground of our individual lives, and sending the deepest part of ourselves soaring into the universe, to the end that we might rise higher and higher, be better and better, stronger, smarter, and finer in everything we do. The Double Ninth Festival is a kite flying contest of endurance, originality, and beauty. The endurance part of the festival, the blades on kite strings and strings coated with powdered glass, that part of the festival is one element we try not to incorporate into our church life. When we and others in this congregation send our kites of desire, whatever shapes they take, high into the sky, our only response need be to stand in awe of the colors, the forms, the mastery of handling, the delicate inner strength and outer beauty of dream and dreamers. When we do so, our lives and the life of this congregation will be blessed. May it be so. Amen. Please join me now in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice. The flame has been doused. The fire of our community still burns. In this moment, we become beacons on the prairie, bearers of light and warmth until we gather again to rekindle our communal chalice. May you know fully and deeply the blessings of each of your heart's seasons, the inward turning of winter, springtime's lush renewal, the effortless steady growth of summer, and autumn's rich harvest. May your passage from season to season be blessed, eased by hands to hold, and by the light of love to guide you on. Amen.